There are so many concerns when it comes to buying real estate, not just a home to live in, but also investment property. Like, where do you buy? What do you buy? When do you buy? What do you buy it with? How do you get a mortgage on that property? But today I'm going to go over all of that with you really quickly, very briefly, so you'll have a very good understanding of the ins and outs if you want to purchase a property. And I tell people, this is a means in which you can buy a home, buy an investment property, live in one of the units, and have someone else pay for the mortgage. So you're practically living rent-free, mortgage-free for at least a year. Thank you for watching. My name is Wayne Turner. I've been a real estate broker for nearly 30 years. I've bought, flipped, built, sold, held, you name it. We've done just about everything in real estate. And my goal has been for many, many years now is to help as many people as I can to bring as much value as we can to consumers. So you can take this knowledge, factual information, and use it to your advantage when it comes to purchasing and buying and flipping and everything there is to do with real estate. So let's start at the beginning. You have to get qualified for a loan. Most lenders can give you a loan for investment property. But here's the big one. Here's one that's really, really, really cool. You can purchase an investment property, a duplex, a quadruplex, or triplex with an FHA loan. The advantage to this is you only need 3.5% of the purchase price for the down payment on the property on an FHA loan. Now you have to have a 620 or higher credit score. You have to have a couple of years on the job. You have to show that you have income. They're going to verify your debt to income ratio. They're going to verify your employment, and you're basically buying a property this way where you can physically buy it, live in one of the units, and you can lease rent out the others. You can do a short-term rental, Airbnb, or a long-term rental. It really doesn't matter. Now, as mentioned, you have to live in one of the units. So if you live in one of the units, you can lease out the other units and get this FHA loan. Here's the thing. You only need to live in one of the units for 1 year. After 1 year, you can move out. You can go buy another property if you wish. You can go buy a single family home. You can build a home. You can go buy another piece of investment property if you want to. Now, it's important to know you can only have one FHA loan at a time. So for example, let's say you buy a triplex. You live in one side, you rent out the other two. After 1 year of living in one side and leasing out the other two, you can move out of that property and then lease that. So here's what you'll want to do. You'll want to refinance that property if you want to do another FHA loan on another piece of property. So for example, maybe your game plan is, look, I want to buy 10 or 12 doors and I want to do it through FHA. Well, what you'll have to do is buy through FHA. After 1 year, you can refinance the property with a conventional mortgage. After you refinance with a conventional mortgage, you can then go buy another investment property through the same process with an FHA loan. This way that I'm talking about is the quickest way to purchase a property where you can physically close on it within 30 days. You only need 3.5% to put down. You got a 620 higher credit score, and the rates, the interest rates, are very competitive. So the interest rate on this type of property is going to be the same as if you bought a single family dwelling. So for example, if the rates are 3.5% on a single family dwelling, that's what you're going to get when you buy an investment property. Now you can do this on up to a quadruplex, meaning 4 units. So think about that. You bought something that's 4 units, you live in one side, you lease out the other 3. If you're leasing out the other 3, I promise you, you're living free. Now a duplex may be a little different because you only have one side. If that person's renting one side for $1,800 or $2,000 and say your mortgage payment is $2,600, it's going to cost you $600 or $700 a month. But I don't know too many people that actually wouldn't want to buy a piece of investment property, live in one side for a year, and basically 75 to 85% of your mortgage payment is covered by the tenant next door. So I mentioned closing costs. Now closing costs are going to run you 3 to 3.5% of the loan amount. And what's really cool about closing costs is that the seller can pay all of your closing costs for you. And that's something that a really good agent will know how to handle and know how to write that up for you, to basically just ask for that and make sure it gets put in the contract. Now you've gotten approved, you're ready to purchase a property, you know you're going to get the seller to pay your closing costs. You need to find a good agent. We can help you do that. As mentioned, we got agents all around the country, or just find somebody, Google reviews, find somebody you're comfortable with. Either way, we're here to help, but make sure the agent is comfortable and experienced with purchasing multifamily property, because there is a difference between writing offers and getting them accepted on multiple family properties as opposed to single family properties. So the next thing is to identify a property. You find a property that you really like and you're ready to write the offer on it. You make the offer on the property, but there's several things that you'll want to include in the contract. Number one, you want to do a 10 to a 14-day home inspection period. That gives you 10 to 14 days after the contract is accepted and finalized between your offer offer and the seller, you'll have 10 to 14 days to do a home inspection on that property. The other thing is a home warranty. I always tell people, look, when you're buying your first property, really doesn't have to be your first property. You're buying a piece of investment property. You can get a home warranty covered for the property for 1 year, and the seller can pay for that. Now, on multifamily properties, when it's a duplex, triplex, quadruplex, it'll run anywhere from $800 to $1,300. But once again, that's something that the seller can pay for. So I always tell my clients, ask for the warranty, we'll ask the seller to pay for it, and it will come from the seller's proceeds of the sale. Now, typically on any property that you purchase, you're going to put down what they call a deposit, an escrow check is what you're going to write. Now, basically is your money in good faith telling the seller that I do want to purchase your property. I'm putting up $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000, whatever it may be. Typically, it's a percentage, and it's usually around 1 to 2% of the purchase price of the property. Keep in mind, they will cash that check and deposit that check, and that check's typically held by the title company who's going to close the real estate transaction or the listing company who has the property listed. Now, that's your money. They cash the check. If the deal doesn't go through based on the stipulations in the contract, then you can get that earnest money back. And of course, when you're making this offer, you always want to make sure that you get a title policy on the property. It depends on what state that you're in. Some states the seller pays for the title policy, some states the buyer pays for the title policy, of which can be covered in your closing costs. That's why I say it's either 3 to 3.5% in closing costs to purchase a property that the seller can pay, because it really just depends on whether or not you're in a state where the seller pays for the title or the buyer pays for the title. Either way, if you ask for 3.5%, you'll be covered, but a good real estate agent will be able to coach you and kind of work with you and tell you, no, the seller pays for title or the buyer pays for title, and we only need 3% in closing costs if the seller's paying for title, and vice versa if you, the buyer's paying for title. Now, one of the most important things you'll want to make sure you have when it comes to purchasing investment property, you'll want to put in that contract that you receive the copies of the lease agreements on the tenants that are currently in the property. And not only do you receive those, but you have a chance to look over those during the home inspection period, and that they're to be satisfactory to you. So it's not just putting in the contract that you're supposed to get a copy of the lease. It has to go a little bit further. You're to get a copy of the lease, and those lease agreements are to be to your satisfaction. In other words, you look at them, you go over them, and it looks good, and your agent can work you through it. And if you need to, you can reach out to a closing attorney, real estate attorney, and they can look at those leases for you. Because most importantly, you want to make sure that, is it a 6-month lease? Is it a year lease? Can they have pets? Can they not have pets? You just want to make sure everything is satisfactory to you. In that, it's also going to show you the deposits that are on the property. Because keep in mind, whenever you go to purchase this type of property, whatever deposit has been put on the property by the tenant that's currently in it, those deposits are transferable. Now, if there's a lease agreement but there's no tenants in the property, then you can ask for their lease, you can use their lease, or we recommend a company called easylandlordforms.com. We'll put a link in the description here. And easylandlordforms.com is a quick way you can go and do tenant screening. They have lease applications and all that good stuff. So here's a little real estate tip hack, and I've shared this with a lot of people over the years, and it works great, and people are like, wow, that was really cool. That saved me a lot of money, and that's ask the seller if they would allow you to show the property to prospective tenants. Even though you don't own the property, if there's a vacant unit or two in the property that you're buying, you can run ads, you can promote that property with the amount, the deposit, and everything as though you already own it. And then you can show that property. Then you can jump over to Easy Landlord Forms, have them fill out an application, review it, and then you can have their move-in date literally the day of or the day after that you close. So think about that. When you purchase a piece of real estate like that, your mortgage payment's not going to be typically for 30 days. So if it's not for 30 days, now you've got somebody moving in. Literally, I've done this where I hand them the keys right after I was handed the keys. They move in the same day. They're giving me a deposit plus the first month's rent. I haven't even paid a mortgage payment yet, but I had that tenant lined up because the sellers, they say, well, sure, I don't care. Just go show it to whomever you want to. You've already got a tenant lined up. You've reviewed their application. Boom. Closing day, rent day. all in one. Now, I mentioned to you doing a home inspection. Now, you want to do a home inspection on the property. We put that in the contract. It's typically done within 10 to 14 days. The reason why you want to do a home inspection is just to give you peace of mind. You know that that property, whether someone else lays their head on the pillow or you lay your head on another pillow, you know that, okay, worst case scenario, the central heating air goes out, the appliances go out, the water heater goes out. You can log onto a website, put in your number that they give you when you get that home warranty, and that warranty covers the house for 1 year, by the way, paid by the seller, as I mentioned, and it's renewable. So if you want to renew those every year, you can definitely do that. But if you have a water heater go out or central heat and air stops working, the tenant calls you, you literally log into the website, tell them what is happening, they'll contact you within 24 hours. It's fixed. And more than likely, there's a $75 or $100 service fee. But I can tell you, we put warranties on all the properties that we sell here at my company, Turner Real Estate. And people love it because it's like, wow, we had to replace a condenser that cost $712. The warranty was covered that, seller paid for it, it was a win-win for the buyer. Now keep in mind, when you're purchasing a property, it used to be years ago that you just purchased a property and got to put someone in that property for 6 months or a year or a 2-year lease. What's really cool is now you can do an Airbnb. So if you purchase a property and it's in a major metropolitan city where there's a lot of tourism, you can use that property as an Airbnb. However, you have to make sure that you can Airbnb a property because there's parish, county, and city ordinances now, and most of the time they'll be okay with you doing a short-term rental, but you have to get a license because they want to make sure they get a portion of your tax dollars, unfortunately, and that's just the way it works. But hey, it can still make you more money by doing an Airbnb on a weekly or bi-weekly basis as opposed to just signing a 6-month lease with a tenant. So on closing day, everything is lined up. You typically close within 30 to 45 days of writing the contract. And once again, you make an offer and they make counter offer and you'll counter back. But don't get hung up on the price. I think so many people get hung up on the price. Think about that. It's not too often that we negotiate big prices on big ticket items, whether it be $100,000 or $300,000 to $400,000 to $500,000. And I tell people, don't get hung up on that big price because oftentimes you're going to be paying a payment. The tenant's going to be covering a lot of your payment. Don't miss out. I call that basically stepping over $1 to pick up a penny. You're going to hold on this property for 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 years, maybe even longer. So don't get focused so much on the price. A lot of people will not buy a property because they got hung up on a $5 or $10 or $12 or $15,000 on the price. And when it come down to the payment, literally it was 30, 40, 60, 80 bucks a month. And that made the difference in them buying a property and they didn't see the payment. They got hung up on the price. Don't do that. So on closing day, you're typically at a real estate attorney's office and you're closing the real estate transaction. It takes about an hour to close the transaction, at which your deposit that you put down is applied towards your down payment. So what you have to come up with out of pocket at closing is that 3.5% less your deposit. That's what you have to bring, certified funds check. That day, you get the keys to your property. In most states, check with your states, but in most states, when you purchase a property and close on it, you get the keys and possession of that property that day. And as mentioned, you can go and hand the keys to a tenant on that property. Now, I always tell people it's best to have the locks changed or rekeyed because you never know who had a key for that property. So for security purposes, just put new locks on it. So after you close on the property, I always suggest to everyone, start a business if you haven't already. Create an LLC. You can do that for $400 or $500. Most of the time you can do that online with the Secretary of State's office within your state. After that, start a checking account and a savings account. Now, deposits are going to be transferred if there's a current tenant in that property. You want to take that deposit money that's given to you from the seller at closing. You'll want to put that in the savings account. That can be your deposit account. Your checking account, you may want to put a little bit of money in that in case something goes wrong. You have a little bit of reserve in there in case something goes wrong. It's not that you have to, but maybe drop $100 or $200 in there. You can then go to Home Depot or Lowe's and you can set up commercial accounts. By setting up a commercial account, you have a business name and you'll get a discount on the purchases that you make on the property. They also keep up with everything that you purchased under that PO, purchase order number. So I hope you've learned something today and that you can go out and purchase real estate. Remember, if you want to go to Easy Landlord Forums, we'll put a link below. You can check that out. We have agents all around the country if you need an agent that you can work with, that you're comfortable with. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel. Check us out on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. We're all over the place and we're trying to bring as much informative, helpful information to you as possible. And always have fun and no worries.